Welcome to Mainer Solutions Connect Symposium. Thank you for attending today's session on Sage Intacct, How to Use Standard Reports. My name is Justin Klein and I will be the moderator, and your presenter today is Mike Fox. He is one of the co-leads of our Intacct practice. I will now hand over the reins to Mike to begin the presentation.
Thank you, Justin, and hello everybody, and thanks for attending today's webinar. My name is Michael Fox and I'm a financial software consultant. I joined Mainer in August of last year. I'm a former Intacct user who converted from QuickBooks to Intacct, and the decision to move to Sage Intacct was heavily influenced by Intacct's report writing capabilities. Our team here at Mainer, we've covered the financial report writer in previous conferences and webinars. So today we thought it would be beneficial to maybe take a look at a second tier of reporting. That many of you have probably used some aspects of it, but these are application-based reports, and they're commonly referred to in nomenclature as standard reports. Let's get started, shall we? So what are standard reports? Well, standard reports, and I'm going to be turning my head so I can look at my screen so I get a nice profile of me. I apologize for that. But standard reports are reports that are typical to an application and have already been created by Intacct for you. You can either run them as they are, or you can make slight modifications to them. You know, you can set the filters, you can specify certain items that you want in there. But what's really nice about these reports is that they do allow you to see data and information at a different level than what you can achieve through the financial reports. So with that being said, how do you find a standard report? So as I mentioned just a couple of minutes ago, most of you are already using some variations of these reports. Most typically the general ledger, you're probably using the trial balance or maybe the general ledger report, but there are others in each one of these. You can navigate to them in two ways. Like I said, the first way is to go into the application and go into the All tab, and the reports will be listed on the right-hand side in the lower right-hand corner. Or you can go to you can navigate to the Reports Center and click on the drop-down box and see the reports there, all listed by application. As you click into each of the applications, and I'll show you this in just a moment. As you click into each of the applications in this tab, you'll see the reports that are listed. So it's just good to know. Intacct really tries to make it really flexible for you to move from, to locate reports and account groups and things like that. They're all over the place in Intacct, make it more convenient and accessible. Here's a table that shows a few of it shows all of the standard core type applications and their attendant standard reports. So you can see it's a pretty lengthy list. We won't be able to go through all of these today, unfortunately. But I picked a few that I think, Wes, and between the two of us, we picked a few that we thought you would be interested in learning a bit more about. So before I launch into all of this, I want to let you know that the Help Center is a really good resource for learning more about these reports. And it's really easy to navigate to. Just go into Help Center, go to Reporting, I'll show you this, Application or Subject, and then there's a nice overview, and then here's a list of each of the applications. And once you click into one of these, you'll see some really good information on each report. So I'm going to switch into Intacct, and hopefully this will work. Okay, so the account balances report. What this is basically a trial balance report. What it allows you to add a account range or account group filter to it. We'll take a look at what it looks like. This is a demo database, so it has data that goes back a few years. I'm just going to run this as of the last period that I know it has data for. Oh, I have to select account range, I'm sorry. Let's use an account group, make this quicker, and let's use assets. So this report allowed me, it's the same view as the trial balance, but it allowed me to select a specific group of accounts. So that's handy if you're in the trial balance and you don't want to see everything, you can just switch to this report to see kind of a subset of specific targeted accounts or account groups. Right, the next stop on our, on our trip through here is our activity reports. And these are reports that will allow you to look at departmental or location-based activity using kind of a hierarchical list. So let's take a look at that. Let's take a look here. So the activity report, look at a department. And as I'm going through here, I want to point out a few things. All of these reports are pretty much the same. If you've used a general ledger report or a trial balance report or a customer aging or a vendor aging report, they're all kind of the same. Time period, there's some filters, and then there's other information down below depending on the report. This is a pretty skinny report as far as the options that you can use. But again, I'm going to go back into the same time period for which I will use data. And I'm going to run it wide open. It shouldn't have taken that long. Let's just run it for a specific department. Let's choose IT. So, and I'm going to go in here and switch something off real quick. I'm going to take off show by location, and I want to show you what it looks like by department. So this report is just showing us for the IT department all of the transactions for the time period that I selected, and it gives us some some other information as well, some identifiers that will help you maybe find what you're looking for. But it's a nice this is a nice report that you can run by department. You can do it by department and then location. And that's the view we originally started with. So now we're looking at the IT department. And we're looking across the different locations, and then this is all the detail that's in there. You can also filter, excuse me, by an account group if you'd like. So if we just wanted to look at, I don't know, let's type in salary and wages. So now we're looking at IT department, location, and then just a specific general ledger account. So again, this is just another way of identifying specific types of transactions with a unique view that you can't normally achieve. Some of this you can achieve with a financial report, but this is just a really handy thing to have in your back pocket. Now let's move to the next phase here. Well, I like this one. How many of you have ever struggled with account groups? Because you can end up having so many of them. They, they're like rabbits. They just multiply, and sometimes it can just get out of hand. So let's take a look at the account groups hierarchy report. And this report will show you all of the account groups and groups of account groups, and then the actual accounts that populate them, the members of those groups. So for example, this one, accounts receivable net of allowances. This account, you can identify it because of the indentation. This is a group of account groups, and the two account groups that comprise this group of account groups, this net of AR net of allowance, are accounts receivable and allowance for doubtful accounts. And you can see the accounts that are actually in there. Now, this report will show you if you have accounts set up in your chart of accounts for which you never assign them to a group, they would appear on this report just with the account number. They wouldn't have any account group associated with them. So that's one way that you can find any orphans that you might have out there. And when you can click into any one of these, and it will take you to the account group list, and you can just actually from there view the hierarchy of that specific account group. And I just did this so you could actually see that it's the same information here that you see here. So that's a pretty handy report. I've used it a few times myself. And this is a report that Wes and I really like. This dimension balances report allows you to kind of array activity and by account and then by the dimension. So you might be able to see, so you can see where there might be some gaps or inconsistencies in how dimensions are used. I know that we have some clients who require the use of a department on a transaction, but they did not set that requirement up on the chart of accounts or through some other measure like a SMART rule. So they have some compliance issues where transactions are tagged without a department. So this report has other uses, but this is one use that's really helpful. And I hope that you'll agree. So this dimension balances report, I'm actually going to go into, I've memorized some things, so maybe to save time, I'm just going to grab the memorized report for this I created. I'll just edit this one, and it'll just take us to the screen. So I'm using a time period for which I have data, and on this one, I just wanted to look at how my utilities are being tagged because I felt like maybe something was missing in the P&L as far as a department. So I'm going to take a quick view. And you can see on this report that the transactions posted for that time period to the utilities account, that they all have a department and a location, which is really good, except this last transaction does not have a department associated with it. So in a financial report where a column is set up to show department results and this transaction was not tagged, that report would be $1,000 short. So this is a really nice tool to help you identify how you're doing as far as tagging dimensions. And then there's also other uses where you can use it. You can just use it to if you're just interested in maybe trying to figure out how to set up a report and you just want to get a get a feel for how the transactions are showing up in Intacct, just you can run this report and just it'll help inform you as you're building reports how the combinations of different dimensions as it relates to specific accounts like balance sheet accounts or income statement accounts. This report will be helpful for you. So those were some reports in General Ledger that we thought would be interesting. Now we're going to move over to accounts payable, and there's this really nice report. It's called a bills analysis report, and it will allow you to look at your purchases, and you can see things like expense line items on this report. You can filter it by vendor, and it shows descriptions and dimensions and allocations if you're tagging them with those things. You can use this report to identify how effective you are in tagging dimensions and descriptions across the AP function, because that's really an area where I think there can be a lot of turnover in accounts payable clerks, and training sometimes can be less than, not as effective as you'd like. So this is a good way also to double check how folks are doing. Let's jump into accounts payable. I think I have a memorized report for this too. I do. So I'm just going to open that. So with this report, I've got the same time period, and this time I'm just interested in a specific vendor, and I'm interested in how much the activity in as it pertains to Lenovo, and I want to see the detail. And as I'm going through here, I would like to show you some of the features in here, and maybe cycle through the report a couple times. So right now, I've got it set up to show me. I'm going to show you the summary. And we're going to look at all, and we'll look at Lenovo for the time period. So this gives me a nice summary of my spend areas with Lenovo. So I'm spending money across these 4 accounts. Now what I'd like to be able to do is look at the detail. So within each of the accounts that we saw summarized, we'll see the actual bill detail. And you can see, this is where I was, when I mentioned that you can look at how you can visualize how effective you are in tagging or populating certain fields within the AP bill. So for an example, on this first bill, it's a 2-line bill for laptops across, looks like it's the same location, 2 different lines, but this line, there's a bill number, but there's no description. And in all of these lines, there's neither. So if your goal is to basically have your bills populated with a bill number and with a, with some kind of a description of what the expense is for, and you were going to grade whoever's billing Lenovo, I would have to say that, it's pretty much an incomplete grade. It's not been very consistent. But in addition to that, that's a nice way to visualize how effective you're tagging things. And Chris, I think that this might be something that you might want to go back through as you've been, live on Intacct for a while, just to take a look at it, just to see, and anyone else who's on the call, I think it's pretty helpful. But in addition, from any of these, obviously with Intacct's really nice drill down feature, you can drill down, into the actual source document. And let's look at one last thing on here. And we'll just see how many have been not paid. This is another nice feature. It's another way to identify some bills that are just hanging out there. So for the office supply accounts for Lenovo, we've got a bunch of bills that have not been paid. So while you're in this report, you can toggle quickly between all paid, fully paid, partially paid. So that's also just a nice little report to have tucked away. I like this one too, because even though you can go into the vendor, list here and set up, custom views and so forth, and export a file, whether Excel or PDF or whatever. There's also this really nice vendor list report. I believe I have this also set up, so I do. Let's just take a look at this one. And I believe I have this set up wide open, but I want to show you down here. These in this formatting, think of these as additional fields that you can open up. And I'm just going to unclick them. Uncheck these. And let's view it. So this is the way it'll originally appear when you click into the report. Vendor ID, name, any terms that were set up. So again, if you're expecting terms to be set up for all of your vendors, you can see that there's some issues. Tax ID, if your protocol is to have tax IDs for all vendors, regardless of whether they're 1099 or not, you can put that in there as well. And any default, if you want to have GL default accounts set up by vendor, you'll be able to see these as well. So going back to the customize screen and clicking on some of these other fields that I checked off or unchecked earlier, the report becomes even more useful. Now, in addition to the things that are normally there, you can expand to include almost all of the field attributes and vendor demographics that are input fields in the vendor record. Losing my elevator here. But scrolling across to the right, there are many, many more fields, addresses and all of that. So you can export this report. And if you're looking for opportunities to maybe develop a more complete vendor master file where you have vendors that are missing certain data and certain information points, this is a report that's very helpful. Anyway, so I'm going to move off this report. Hopefully this was a brief enough description, but yet informative enough to let you know what it's all about. Okay. So that's it for AP right now. I know that many of you have are familiar with running the AP ledger and the vendor aging reports. So let's look at cash management. There are a couple of reports in cash management also that I feel are pretty helpful. The first one is the cash analysis report. The cash analysis report, I'd like to walk you through this right now. And I keep clicking on these memorized reports, so I think I'll comment on that because that's really nice. I'm going to go back real quick. So when you click into one of these standard reports, and let's say that you set up some parameters and you would like to look at that routinely. So the easiest thing to do is to queue it up with everything that you want to include in the report and just memorize it. And these reports are memorized within the application itself. So any reports that you memorize for AP will show up when you click on the memorize report link in AP. You just give it a name that describes it really well, and it will save it in your memorized reports for the application. We happen to be in cash management. So I created this and I saved it. I think it's a really nice feature. I encourage you to use that, especially for some of your other reports like vendor aging and AP ledger. It's a lot quicker to go there than to go in here and always redo the report each month. So this cash analysis report is really nice because it allows you to look at how much cash you have, and then also how much exposure you have in the form of liabilities. So I think I have this set up for one bank account, one location, and I'm including accounts receivable, and I'm using a standard interval selection for aging. So let's just take a look at it. Let's run it. So this report indicates that for this bank account, we have a balance right now of 1.6 million and change. In addition, for the location that we selected, I think it was 100 USA, these are all the outstanding bills in the form of, so these are the liabilities, cash out. So we got 1.7 million in the bank and about $500,000 that's going out. So far we look pretty good. And then this also shows us how much, since we selected include AR, this shows us open invoices that haven't been paid yet. So we have another 1.8 million in cash potentially coming in. So this is a helpful report, I think, in being able to show you kind of where your cash position is in regards to cash on hand, what's loaded up in AP, and what's due in AR. And I'm going to flip back to the customized screen, and you can change this. You just wanted to see everything. And let's get rid of the location and just view the whole shoot and match here. So now we have all of our bank accounts, and we have all of our liabilities and all of our accounts receivable. So that's a really handy report. Again, you can filter it to narrow the bandwidth so that you're looking at a specific combination of accounts and dimensions. But I think that this would be very helpful to begin using if you're not using it already. And I don't know how many people use the cash management check registers, but there's a few of them listed here. I'm going to show you one of them. We're going to look at a check register, and I'm just running it for an entire period for just one bank. So what you're seeing here is basically everything that's hitting this checking account for that time period, who the check was issued to. So it's basically like looking into your checkbook. You can also narrow the time frame to a month, if, you know, whatever time frame is most relevant. You can specify a specific GL account or range of GL accounts. I just happened to select rent. I'm going to go back to that real quick because in this looks like they're paying $5,500 a month rent, and they've only got through 12/31/18, and they only had 55,000, so that's only 10 months worth of rent. So there's rent that's not been billed or paid, and you can also basically see all of your clear, when the checks were cleared, what they were cleared in these bank reconciliations here, and there's drill down capabilities as always within Intacct. So that's just a nice way to look at your checking account activity without going into the checking account itself or into historical bank reconciliations. Okay, so I covered that. So the next stop on our trip through this is accounts receivable. And like accounts payable vendor list, there is a comparable customer list available in AR. And it's basically the same construct. Should look familiar. If we just view it, it'll list all the customers, and it just has some basic, fields. You can then add fields as you would like. We'll just add balance there. So this is handy as well because you can visualize in one report. You can see the balances for your customers. You can also get that from the customer list as well. But it's just really nice to have this set up as a report. And there's a little bit of formatting here. You can have it as a multi-line. Let's just add a couple more of these just so I can show you what that does. So now it's a report that has the additional fields kind of listed below, or you can switch it so it's a single line, which is probably preferable. But again, this report, goes up quite a way. So it just depends on how you want to use it. If you were looking for something like this where you can export it and then use it as a way to create a mailing list, perhaps, or just to identify missing information and then create a list of that information and give it to the AR clerk or for vendors to the AP clerk, to have them go out and maybe populate those missing fields that you feel should have been in there all along. This is the way to do it. And now the last report I think I'm going to go through is the invoice analysis report. And we'll conclude with the invoice analysis report, which is similar to the bills analysis report and accounts payable. So this report, I wonder if I have any filters on here. I don't. So just like the vendor analysis, for the bill analysis report, you can select a specific customer, or you can run it wide open. Let's use easy security, and let's just run it wide open, and we'll use all bills, and we'll use detail. So now we're looking at the invoice analysis for one customer, and these are the accounts that this customer's activity is hitting. And again, we selected all, so this is just the totality of everything that was booked in this time period, which was all of 2018. And scrolling down, of interest, I think, would be, well, of that, how much has not been received? Obviously, you can get some of this information directly from looking at, the customer itself in the AR module. But this is a nice analytical type report, so you can have everything in there. And while you're in this one spot, you can look at everybody, look at all of your customers that have unpaid bills and look at them from within a specific array of accounts or a specific account. And again, you can drill into the transaction. And you can also use, for this kind of work, you can use Intacct Collaborate to perhaps, message back if you're the controller and you're wondering why we got these bills, these invoices that aren't paid. You could use Collaborate to, to message back, ask a question of the AR clerk to find out a little bit more information. And I'm just trying to see if there's anything else in here that would be of help. Well, that's what I have for you today. I did want to, let's see. There's a couple features in Intacct that came out with release 3, since we do have a couple of minutes here. Let me see if I can quickly get to one. Let's see. Let's go in accounts payable. Bills. Let's view a bill. Let's look at this one. It was paid. It says it was paid. This is a feature, I don't know, I think this came out in the first release of this year or the last release of last year. But whenever you are originally in a list, like I was here in bills, and I clicked on, view, and if I want to go back to the list, I don't have to click done. I can just click this and it'll just take me back to the list. So that's a nice little handy feature that people have been asking for. But I wanted to show you this one too. So if I look at view details, now these pop-up screens, and this is really annoying, especially when you're drilling down from a bill into a payment. You wanted to see something, over here in this gray area in the bill, you could not move this around. But now with release 2, this is really handy. Anytime that you're in one of these screens that you can't move and you see this icon, you just click it open. And now it puts it in its own little browser window, sort of like what happens in the help center. So now you have this, you can move it around, move it to your different screen or whatever, resize it. So that's really a nice feature. So those two, when you're navigating around Intacct, those are pretty fun features to have available. I've used it a lot because it was such a pain not being able to move that pop-up. Well, I hope that this was informative, and if you were coming to this hoping that we were going to cover financial reporting, believe me, we will cover financial reporting again in the future. And with that, I'd like to thank Justin and Chris and Wes for sitting in on this today, and once again, I'd like to thank you all for taking the time out of your busy day to attend. Thanks.